The economy of delivery apps, freedom or misery. Today, we gather to discuss a topic that has become central to the lives of millions of workers around the world, the economy of delivery apps. This phenomenon, which has gained momentum in recent decades, raises a crucial question. Is it truly a form of freedom, or are we facing a new kind of misery? To better understand this issue, we first need to contextualize what it means to be an app worker. These professionals, most of whom work as delivery people, have their lives shaped by digital platforms that promise flexibility and autonomy. However, this promise often proves to be illusory. The freedom to choose their working hours and locations is frequently accompanied by a series of challenges that call into question the viability of this model. One of the main aspects to be considered is financial instability. Most app workers do not have a fixed salary. They are paid per delivery, which means their income is directly affected by service demand. During periods of low demand, many face serious difficulties in meeting their basic expenses. Financial uncertainty becomes a constant in their lives, leading to a state of anxiety and insecurity. Additionally, the lack of labor benefits is an issue that cannot be ignored. Unlike workers with formal ties to companies, app delivery people do not have access to rights such as paid vacations, a 13th salary, or even health insurance. This precariousness of work jeopardizes not only their financial well-being, but also their physical and mental health. In times of crisis, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, many found themselves helpless, without governmental or corporate support. Another factor contributing to the exploitation of these professionals is the constant pressure to increase productivity. Platforms use algorithms to monitor workers' performance, creating an environment where speed and efficiency are prioritized at the expense of safety and well-being. Often, delivery workers are forced to accept dangerous working conditions, such as making deliveries in high-risk areas or adverse weather conditions, all in the name of an efficiency that is never sufficiently rewarded. The intense competition among workers is also a concerning aspect. With new delivery people entering the market, supply exceeds demand, leading to a frantic race for each delivery. This dynamic not only reduces individual earnings but also creates an environment of rivalry that dehumanizes workers, reducing them to mere numbers in a system aimed at maximizing profits at any cost. However, we cannot overlook the positive impact that these platforms can have on some people's lives. For many, the flexibility offered by app work is an opportunity for alternative income, especially in contexts where formal employment is scarce. This freedom of choice can be seen as a form of autonomy, allowing individuals to build their own routines and balance work and personal life more equitably. Nonetheless, this autonomy is often a double-edged sword. The freedom of choice is limited by the need for survival, causing many workers to feel trapped in a cycle of exploitation. The promise of freedom transforms into an invisible prison where individuality and dignity are constantly challenged. It is essential that, as a society, we reflect on the work model we are promoting. We need to consider alternatives that ensure not only flexibility, but also the dignity and safety of workers. Regulating app work is a necessary step to ensure that the rights of these professionals are respected. Measures such as guaranteeing a minimum wage, access to benefits, and creating a safe working environment are crucial for transforming this economy into a fairer space. The fight for better working conditions is a collective struggle. We must unite to demand changes that benefit app workers and promote a more sustainable and humane economic model. We should remember that behind every delivery, there is a person who deserves respect, dignity, and safety. In conclusion, the economy of delivery apps represents a complex dilemma. It is a form of freedom that, in practice, becomes miserable for many. We need to work together to ensure that freedom is not just an illusion, but a reality accessible to all. Challenges of app workers between food and packages. Today, we gather to address a topic that directly affects the lives of millions of workers operating in food delivery and other product delivery platforms, the difficulties these professionals face in their daily lives. The app economy has brought forth new forms of work, but it has also imposed significant challenges that need to be discussed and tackled. App workers, especially those delivering food, must contend with a series of obstacles that affect not only their earnings, but also their health and well-being. One of the main problems these professionals face is the mixing of food deliveries with various packages, which may seem like a common practice, but actually leads to numerous complications. When a delivery person is assigned to make multiple deliveries, they are often asked to pick up both food and packages from different establishments. This practice, seen as an attempt to optimize time and resources, often turns into a logistical nightmare. Imagine the scene. A delivery person enters a restaurant to pick up a hot meal and is then forced to rush to another location to collect a package, all while trying to ensure that the food does not arrive cold or damaged to the customer. This constant pressure for efficiency often results in a service that does not meet customer expectations and compromises the quality of deliveries. Another significant challenge is the waiting time. App workers frequently face considerable delays when collecting orders. These delays can occur for a myriad of reasons: high demand at certain times, lack of organization at establishments, or even technical issues with the apps themselves. The result is always the same: deliverers become frustrated and, more importantly, lose earning opportunities. When a delivery person arrives at a restaurant and is forced to wait for long periods to pick up an order, this not only impacts their efficiency, but also their income. The logic is simple. The more time they spend waiting, the less time they have for other deliveries. In an environment where every minute counts, this loss of time translates into a loss of money. For many workers, this situation is unsustainable as they rely on every penny to cover their daily expenses. Additionally, the unpredictable nature of work as an app deliverer means that workers have no control over the number of orders they can complete in a day. They can plan their routes and schedules, but factors like waiting times and mixed deliveries make this task extremely difficult. This creates a sense of helplessness and frustration, as even with effort, they cannot guarantee a stable income. Another point to address is food safety. App workers are often held responsible for the quality of the delivery, but frequently have no control over the conditions in which food is prepared and packaged. When a delivery person is forced to transport packages and food at the same time, there is a risk of compromising the integrity of the products. This lack of attention to food safety is not just a quality issue, it is also a health concern. Improper handling of food can lead to severe problems for both workers and customers. The undervaluation of delivery workers is also reflected in the lack of recognition and support from the platforms. Although these workers are the visible face of the companies, they often feel invisible, with no access to benefits and labor rights. In a scenario where the pressure to deliver quickly is constant, it is crucial for companies to recognize the value of their workers and provide conditions that ensure their health and safety. Furthermore, the lack of clear communication between workers and platforms is a factor that exacerbates many of the problems faced. Often, deliverers do not receive adequate information about orders, such as estimated waiting times or specific instructions on how to handle products. This lack of clarity contributes to inefficiency and increases frustration among workers who feel unprepared to deal with the situations that arise. It is crucial that, as a society, we look at these challenges critically and seek solutions that promote not only economic efficiency, but also the well-being of workers. Regulating app work is a necessary step to ensure that these professionals have access to rights and benefits that respect their dignity. This includes creating standards that address the mixing of deliveries, ensuring that working conditions are adequate and safe. Moreover, it is essential to promote awareness of the importance of app delivery workers. They are truly the backbone of a system that relies on their skills and dedication. Recognizing and valuing their work is vital to building a fairer and more sustainable environment. In conclusion, the work of app deliverers may be seen as a modern and innovative solution, but in practice, they face a series of challenges that urgently need to be addressed. The mixing of food with packages, delays in collection, and constant pressure to maintain efficiency are just a few of the obstacles these professionals encounter daily. We need to act collectively to promote changes that ensure not only the freedom to work independently, but also the dignity and security that all workers deserve. Challenges of digital work platforms in the UK. Today, I would like to discuss a topic that increasingly affects workers in the UK who rely on digital platforms for their livelihoods. The advent of delivery and online service platforms has ushered in a new era of opportunities, but it has also imposed serious challenges that need urgent attention. Among these challenges, unjustified account suspensions, excessive nationality verification requirements, and questionable payment calculation practices stand out. Firstly, let's talk about account suspensions. Many platforms have the practice of suspending or blocking workers' accounts without a proper investigation into the reasons. This situation is alarming. Workers, who often depend solely on these platforms for their income, find themselves in a vulnerable position without a clear explanation or a fair opportunity to defend themselves. Imagine receiving a notification that your account has been blocked without knowing what happened or how to resolve the situation. This lack of transparency and fairness not only undermines the financial stability of workers, but also fosters a climate of insecurity and distrust towards the platforms. Additionally, the constant requirement for British citizens to prove their nationality after having already undergone a rigorous verification process when opening accounts is another critical issue. This practice is not only unnecessary but also discriminatory. Workers have already demonstrated their identity and nationality when signing up for the platforms, and repeating this process adds an undue burden. It is essential that platforms recognize and respect the dignity and rights of their workers, avoiding practices that are not only ineffective but can also be seen as an attack on their integrity. Another point that deserves attention is how delivery payments are calculated. Previously, platforms assessed payments for each delivery individually, considering the distance and time for each trip. However, this calculation seems to have changed. Platforms now calculate payments based on the first delivery from the restaurant to the customer and then the distance between that customer and the next. This approach is not only confusing but also undermines the fairness of the system. While restaurants and customers pay separate commissions and prices per delivery, the platforms keep the difference, often to the detriment of the workers providing the service. This change in payment calculation raises serious questions about fair compensation for workers. It is concerning to see how these platforms, which profit from the hard work and dedication of couriers, are unwilling to ensure that these professionals are compensated adequately and fairly. The inequality in revenue distribution between platforms and workers is an issue that needs to be discussed and regulated. The lack of clarity and transparency in payment processes not only affects workers' earnings, but also impacts their motivation and commitment. When couriers are uncertain about how much they will earn for their work, it becomes difficult for them to plan their finances and invest in their lives. This uncertainty can lead to a cycle of stress and anxiety, harming not only their mental health, but also their ability to provide quality service. It is imperative that, as a society, we begin to demand significant changes in these practices. We need stricter regulations that protect the rights of app workers and ensure they receive fair compensation for their work. This includes creating clear guidelines on how payments are calculated and implementing transparency mechanisms that allow workers to better understand their earnings. Furthermore, platforms must be held accountable for their account blocking and suspension decisions. It is crucial that there is a fair and transparent process that allows workers to contest these decisions, ensuring they have a voice and representation in a system that often treats them as mere numbers. To move forward, we must also promote an open dialogue between workers, platforms, and regulators. It is essential that all parties involved in the digital economy come together to create a fairer and more equitable working environment. This will not only benefit workers but also platforms, which will be able to count on a motivated and committed workforce. In conclusion, the digital economy in the UK presents a series of challenges that cannot be ignored. Unjustified account suspensions, excessive nationality verification requirements, and questionable payment calculation practices are issues that need to be addressed seriously. It is time to demand changes that ensure dignity, security, and equity for all app workers. Only then can we build a fairer and more sustainable future for the digital economy. The urgent need for regulation of delivery apps in the United Kingdom. Today, we are here to discuss a topic that has become increasingly relevant in our modern society: the lack of adequate legislation and regulation by the government regarding delivery apps and how this directly impacts the lives of workers who depend on these platforms for their survival. The absence of a robust legal framework not only exposes these workers to unfair working conditions, but also jeopardizes the safety and quality of the services provided. It is time to demand significant changes that ensure the protection and respect for the rights of workers. One of the main points we need to address is the issue of nationality verification. Currently, British citizens registering on delivery platforms undergo a rigorous identity verification process. However, after this initial verification, it makes no sense for these workers to be required to present their documentation again at every new update or verification. Once the nationality of a British citizen has been confirmed, that information should be kept in the platform's records, eliminating the need for repeated proof. This would not only reduce the bureaucratic burden on workers, but also promote a more efficient and respectful work environment. On the other hand, it is understandable that foreign workers must revalidate their status at the end of their visa's validity period. However, this requirement should be clear and fair, without penalizing those who are fulfilling their legal obligations. Regulation should ensure that all workers, regardless of their nationality, have their rights respected and are not subjected to unnecessary processes that hinder their ability to work and support their families. Another critical aspect that must be addressed is how deliveries are calculated on the platforms. Currently, many of these companies have adopted a model that does not take into account the individuality of each delivery. Deliveries should be calculated from the restaurant to the individual customer, considering the distance, time, and associated costs. This approach would guarantee fair compensation for couriers, who often struggle to perform their work efficiently but are penalized by a system that does not consider the specifics of each delivery. The lack of transparency in how platforms calculate payments is a growing concern. Workers in the field need financial security, and this becomes impossible when their remuneration is calculated in an opaque manner, disregarding the specifics of deliveries. The government must intervene and create legislation that ensures workers are compensated fairly and that the calculation methods are clear and accessible. Furthermore, it is essential that delivery platforms adopt practices that ensure food safety and the quality of the products transported. A critical point in this regard is the mixing of hot and cold foods, along with supermarket purchases intended for different customers. This practice is not only ineffective, but also poses serious risks of cross-contamination, which can compromise consumer health. It is imperative that the government legislates to prohibit this practice, ensuring that deliveries are made safely and hygienically. Regulation should require platforms to adopt strict protocols for the transportation of food, ensuring that products are kept under appropriate conditions without risk of contamination. This is a public health issue that cannot be overlooked. Protecting consumers must be a priority, and this begins with protecting the workers who make these deliveries. Unfortunately, the lack of action by the government has kept app workers in a vulnerable position. Without a legal structure to protect them, these professionals face constant uncertainties regarding their rights, their remuneration, and their working conditions. The absence of effective regulation contributes to an environment where platforms can operate irresponsibly, prioritizing profits over the well-being of their workers. It is essential that we unite our voices and demand change. We need a government that listens to the concerns of workers and takes concrete steps to protect their rights. Regulating delivery platforms should be a priority on the political agenda, and it is our duty as citizens to demand that this change happens. Moreover, it is essential that workers come together and organize. Only through solidarity and collective action can we push for meaningful change. The fight for fair rights is not only the government's responsibility, but also a responsibility for each of us, who must engage and support our fellow workers. In conclusion, the need for regulation in the delivery app sector is clear and urgent. The government must act to ensure that workers' rights are respected, that nationality verification is simplified, and that deliveries are calculated fairly and transparently. Additionally, it is imperative that measures are taken to prevent practices that jeopardize food safety. Only then can we build a fairer, safer, and more sustainable working environment for all app workers in the United Kingdom.
A necessidade de respeito e apoio aos entregadores nas cidades. Hoje, é com um profundo senso de urgência e preocupação que me dirijo a vocês para discutir uma questão que afeta não apenas os entregadores de carros e motos, mas também a qualidade de vida em nossas cidades: a falta de respeito e apoio por parte dos servidores públicos das prefeituras. É inaceitável que, em vez de facilitarem a vida desses trabalhadores essenciais, as autoridades locais frequentemente optem por aplicar multas e criar barreiras que dificultam o trabalho daqueles que, como nós, são fundamentais para o funcionamento da sociedade. Os entregadores, que desempenham um papel crucial na economia, merecem ser tratados com dignidade e respeito. No entanto, a realidade que enfrentam nas ruas de nossas cidades é bem diferente. Muitas vezes, eles se deparam com a falta de áreas adequadas para estacionar e coletar suas entregas. Em vez disso, são punidos com multas excessivas que colocam ainda mais peso sobre seus já limitados orçamentos. Essa situação é não apenas desumana, mas também contraproducente. Como podemos esperar que esses trabalhadores cumpram suas funções de maneira eficiente se as condições que lhes são oferecidas tornam essa tarefa quase impossível? A pandemia de Covid-19 trouxe à tona a importância do trabalho dos entregadores de forma sem precedentes. Durante os momentos mais difíceis, quando muitos de nós estávamos confinados em casa, esses profissionais foram os verdadeiros heróis. Eles arriscaram suas vidas diariamente, enfrentando não apenas a possibilidade de contrair o vírus, mas também os desafios logísticos e as pressões de um trabalho que muitas vezes não é reconhecido. Os entregadores foram essenciais para garantir que alimentos, medicamentos e produtos de necessidade básica chegassem a nossas portas. Eles foram a ponte entre os serviços essenciais e a população que dependia deles. E o que recebemos em troca? Em vez de reconhecimento e apoio, muitos entregadores enfrentaram um aumento nas multas e restrições que dificultavam ainda mais sua capacidade de trabalhar. Essa falta de consideração por parte dos servidores públicos é, no mínimo, vergonhosa. É fundamental que entendamos que esses profissionais não são apenas números ou estatísticas. Eles são pessoas que sustentam suas famílias e desempenham um papel vital em nossa sociedade. O que precisa ser feito? Em primeiro lugar, é essencial que os servidores públicos das prefeituras adotem uma abordagem mais empática e compreensiva em relação aos entregadores. Isso significa criar políticas que levem em conta as necessidades desses trabalhadores. A implementação de áreas de estacionamento específicas para entregadores, a redução de multas em locais onde não há opções viáveis de estacionamento e a criação de zonas de carga e descarga adequadas são algumas das medidas que poderiam facilitar a vida desses profissionais. Além disso, é crucial que haja um diálogo aberto entre os entregadores e as autoridades locais. Os trabalhadores devem ter uma voz nas decisões que afetam suas vidas e seus meios de subsistência. É necessário criar canais de comunicação onde os entregadores possam expressar suas preocupações e sugestões, e onde as autoridades possam ouvir e agir em conformidade. Essa colaboração é essencial para garantir que as políticas implementadas sejam justas e funcionais. A falta de respeito e apoio aos entregadores não é apenas uma questão de justiça social, é também uma questão de eficiência econômica. Quando as prefeituras dificultam o trabalho dos entregadores, isso resulta em atrasos, insatisfação do cliente, em última análise, em prejuízos para todos os envolvidos. Se queremos construir cidades mais funcionais, precisamos reconhecer a importância dos entregadores e criar um ambiente que lhes permita desempenhar suas funções de maneira eficaz. Além disso, é importante lembrar que a pandemia não acabou. Continuamos a viver em um mundo onde a entrega de produtos e serviços é vital para o nosso dia a dia. Os entregadores continuam a desempenhar um papel fundamental em nossa sociedade, e é nosso dever garantir que eles tenham as condições necessárias para realizar seu trabalho com dignidade e segurança. Em conclusão, é hora de exigirmos respeito e apoio para os entregadores de carros e motos em nossas cidades. Os servidores públicos das prefeituras devem adotar uma abordagem mais compreensiva e empática, criando políticas que facilitem a vida desses trabalhadores essenciais. Vamos nos lembrar do papel crucial que eles desempenharam durante a pandemia e garantir que, em vez de multas e restrições, eles recebam o reconhecimento e o suporte que merecem. Juntos, podemos lutar por um futuro onde todos os trabalhadores, independentemente de sua profissão, sejam tratados com dignidade e respeito. O que pedimos é simples: condições de trabalho justas e um ambiente que permita a todos prosperar.
The reality of app deliverers and the need for regulation. Today, I have the honor of addressing a topic that concerns not only app workers, but also society as a whole. The growing issue of the lack of regulation in delivery platforms and the reality of deliverers operating under unfair and often illegal conditions. An alarming aspect of this situation is the fact that currently, about 30% of registered deliverers on these platforms do not reside in the United Kingdom. This reality raises serious questions about the integrity of the system and the protection of workers' rights. These deliverers often rent their accounts to illegal immigrants, creating a vicious cycle that not only harms the local economy, but also puts the safety and dignity of everyone involved at risk. This practice is extremely harmful, both for legal workers and for those who, in search of an opportunity, end up engaging in activities that are not only illegal, but also expose them to unnecessary risks. It is important to highlight that the lack of regulation of delivery platforms allows these practices to proliferate unchecked. Companies, focused on maximizing their profits, do not care about the origin of their deliverers' accounts, resulting in a chaotic and unprotected work environment. When platforms do not implement adequate verification and control measures, they open the door for exploitation and illegality to become the norm. Furthermore, the registration and verification process for new deliverers is excessively bureaucratic and complicated. This bureaucracy not only discourages legitimate workers, but also facilitates the actions of individuals looking to exploit the system. Creating unnecessary barriers for new deliverers hurts those willing to work honestly and legally, while allowing those operating outside the law to thrive. Platforms must be held accountable for their practices. It is unacceptable that, in a world where technology is advancing rapidly, delivery companies have yet to adopt effective measures to ensure that their workers are legitimate and operate within the law. The lack of oversight and control by the platforms not only compromises the safety of deliverers, but also negatively impacts the local economy and consumer trust. A system that allows 30% of deliverers to not be residents of the country poses a significant risk. This not only weakens the labor market, but also raises concerns about public safety. Deliverers who rent their accounts may not have the same commitment to service quality and safety, resulting in service that can be detrimental to consumers and the reputation of the platforms. It is essential that, as a society, we begin to demand significant changes. We need a government that legislates and properly regulates delivery platforms, ensuring that there are rigorous verification processes for all deliverers. This will not only protect workers who operate legitimately, but also ensure that practices of exploitation and illegality are effectively addressed. Additionally, platforms should be encouraged to adopt more advanced verification technologies that can identify and prevent the use of rented accounts. Implementing systems that require official documents, proof of residence, and other relevant information can help create a safer and fairer work environment for everyone. Deliverers who operate honestly and legally should have their value recognized. They are essential to the economy and play a crucial role in providing services that many of us rely on daily. We cannot allow exploitation and illegality to overshadow the importance of this work. The fight for regulation and protection of workers is a fight for dignity and respect. We need to unite to demand that delivery platforms and the government take concrete measures to ensure that all workers are treated fairly and operate in a system that respects legality and safety. In conclusion, the current situation of delivery platforms and the presence of a significant percentage of non-resident deliverers in the UK are issues that cannot be ignored. It is time to demand changes that ensure the protection of legitimate workers, the safety of consumers, and the integrity of the market. We need a fairer, more transparent, and responsible system that recognizes the value of all workers and effectively combats exploitation and illegality. The urgent need for regulation and responsibility. Today, it is with indignation and a profound sense of urgency that I conclude this speech, addressing an issue that can no longer be ignored: the lack of action by the government to regulate online service platforms, and the responsibility that we all have, from the Prime Minister to every ordinary citizen, to prevent abuses against workers from continuing to occur. It is unacceptable that, in the 21st century, authorities have yet to implement legislation that protects workers in delivery apps and online services. The government, led by the Prime Minister, has the obligation to ensure that all workers, regardless of their occupation, are treated with dignity and respect. The absence of regulation is not just an administrative failure, it is a violation of basic human rights. The abuses that occur daily on delivery platforms are not isolated problems. They reflect a system that allows for the exploitation and precariousness of labor. The platforms operate without accountability, prioritizing profits over the well-being of workers. By failing to act, the government becomes complicit in this situation. It is unacceptable for those in positions of power and influence to turn a blind eye to the hardships faced by millions of workers who support their families with great effort and dedication. Regulating these platforms is a responsibility that must come from the top. The Prime Minister and his ministers have the obligation to listen to the voices of workers and act in defense of their rights. However, this responsibility does not end in the government office. Every member of parliament, every public servant, and even every ordinary citizen must ask themselves, what am I doing to ensure that these workers are treated fairly? When we allow bureaucracy and a lack of government action to perpetuate this situation, we are, in fact, allowing abuses to continue. We are telling workers that their lives and struggles do not matter. This cannot be accepted. Delivery platforms must be held accountable for their practices. They must be required to implement verification measures that ensure all workers are operating within the law. The government must create laws that protect workers' rights, ensuring that working conditions are fair and transparent. This is a matter of social and economic justice. We must demand a system that not only recognizes the value of online service workers, but also promotes an environment where they can work with dignity. It is time to demand that the government take concrete steps to regulate these platforms, ensuring that workers have access to rights and protections that are fundamental to their well-being. The fight for justice is not only the responsibility of workers, it is a call to all of us. We must unite in solidarity and demand that those in positions of power do what is right. We cannot allow the lack of action and governmental apathy to continue sacrificing the well-being of those who sustain our economy. In conclusion, the lack of regulation of online service platforms is an issue that must be addressed urgently. The government, from the Prime Minister to ordinary citizens, has the responsibility to ensure that workers' rights are respected and protected. We must rise against abuses and fight for a future where all workers, regardless of their occupation, are treated with dignity and respect. It is time to act. Together, we can make a difference. If you are enjoying the content we are producing, we want to ask for your help. Your support is essential for us to continue bringing videos and information that truly make a difference. So, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share with your friends and family. Each like, each subscription, and each share help our community grow and motivate us to create even more quality content for you. Together, we can make our message reach further. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your support and for being part of our journey. Let's continue to grow together. Thank you very much.